Hi everybody, great to be back with you today. So this morning's Moravian reflection is from John chapter 6 and it's verses 51 to 58. And before we get into the passage itself, I just want to give a bit of background to what's happened before this, because I think it helps explain partially what it is that Jesus is trying to tell us. So before we get to this part of the chapter, earlier on in the chapter, Jesus has been doing some signs and wonders and healing the sick, and he then feeds the 5,000. And then that same day, he and the disciples leave the area they are, they cross the lake and they go over to Capernaum. The next morning, some Jewish men arrive where that crowd of people is and hear about what's happened. And they gather the people together on their boats and they go over to Capernaum to find Jesus. And they want to ask him some questions. And they ask him about how they might be able to do what he's doing. How could they do God's work? And he tells them that God's asking them to believe in him. And then they go on to ask him about to prove himself, to prove why they should believe in him. They want to see the signs and miracles. They want to know what it is that he can do. And Jesus uses this passage then to explain to them who he is and why he is the bread of life. Now, we know that these are Jewish people for two reasons. One, when they're talking to Jesus, they talk about how their ancestors were with Moses in the wilderness and that each day God gave them manna from heaven to eat to keep their bodies sustained. And we also know it because Jesus is at this time actually teaching in the synagogue in Capernaum. And that's actually really important than them being Jewish, because Jesus using this metaphor of bread and his flesh being the bread of life is part of a continuation of God being the one that provides and satisfies all of our needs, just as he did for the people of Israel when they were in the wilderness. So in this passage, Jesus talks about how he is the living bread, that it is his flesh and his blood that will save the world. And he's really letting us know that the cost of our salvation is him willingly giving his life on the cross. It's actually his flesh and blood. It's his death and resurrection that opens the way for us to be accepted by God, for us to join God's family, to be part of that huge global family of believers. But the cost to Jesus is high. It's his life. And our response to that is our faith in believing in who Jesus is. And in this passage, Jesus uses those metaphors of bread and of drink and his flesh and his blood to help us think about what it really means to have that intimate relationship with him. Because he's not just saying you get to have eternal life and that's it. He actually makes this amazing promise of abiding, which means that to stay with or to live with. He's saying, actually, when you eat this bread of life, when you consume it, when it becomes part of you, when it feeds your soul, I live with you and you live with me. We stay together. We get to stay with Jesus right now and for the whole of eternity. And just like our bodies need nourishment and so we eat food, our souls are also hungry and they need food too. And that food is Jesus. And it's when we put our faith into action, when we listen to Jesus, when we spend time with him, that we build that amazing intimate relationship with him, because that's what he's asking us for. He's saying, come and know me. Don't just know about me, but come and get to know me. And I think it's a little bit like if you are really hungry, actually hungry in your house, and you have a loaf of bread there that you could eat, you are not going to be, your stomach won't get filled by looking at the bread. Knowing all the ingredients that go into the bread is not going to fill your stomach. Even if you go and take the bread out of its packaging and slice it, slather it in butter, and you're just still looking at it, you are not going to be filled. The only way to satisfy your hunger is to eat the bread. And our lives with Jesus are the same. We can know loads about him. We could know tons of verses from the Bible. We could have this, a great idea about theology and be able to talk loads about it. But actually, unless we've really consumed what it is that Jesus gives us, unless we're living in the light of Christ's death and resurrection, we will still be hungry. Our souls will be hungry. Because the great thing about Jesus' death and resurrection is that for right now, right here, Jesus is inviting us into relationship with him. He's saying, come and know me. Come and know me. And what a privilege it is for us to be able to do that. So as you go about your day today, take some time to think, are there places where maybe you have just been running through the motions of life with Jesus? Is it time for you to really step into getting to know who he is, to spending time with him, to finding out what he has to say, to sit and listen at his feet? Spend some time with Jesus today and really get to know him, because that's where the life is. Have a great day. Bye-bye.